Good afternoon, everybody. I am Delia Valles from New Mexico State University, and I am with the NSF HSI STEM Hub. I co-host this webinar series along with Dr. Marta Desmond. I would like to welcome you to our first webinar of our fall webinar series, Targeting Grantmanship. Today's topic is about racial equity in STEM education. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. This webinar will last 1 hour. Today's webinar has 3 speakers, and we anticipate from 15 to 20 minutes for questions, and they will be done at the end of all presentations. The questions related to the topic, today's topic, will be submitted via question and answer box. So can you please check your Q&A box? And that's what we expect you to submit your questions. But if you have questions related to Zoom or other technical questions, please put them in the chatting room. So 2 different places for questions. We have Mr. Daniel Gonzalez. He is dedicated to monitor the technical questions, and he will help you if you have questions about that. And he will also manage Twitter, on live Twitter. So there will be also a NMSU team consisting of Dr. Marta Desmond, Dr. Margie Vela, our program manager, Miss Miriam Favela, and myself, curating questions and reading them at the end of the whole presentations. We might not have enough time to answer all the questions, so we will be posting your answers into our portal. Webinars will be recorded, and those recordings will be posted in our portal as well. All materials and recordings will be available to the members of the HSI STEM Professionals Network. So we invite you to join the network, and to access the network, we will be posting the website in a little bit. Daniel will be posting this website on the chatting room. Just as a reminder, we have our second webinar in October the 1st, so we expect you to join us as well. It will be about geosciences or geological sciences programs. At the end of the presentations, you should receive an email from Dr. Christine Velez, and it will be a survey monkey, very short survey, and we really need you to please take a few minutes to answer that survey. We know that you probably answered this survey before, but we really need your feedback, and data will be reported to the NSF to measure our program outcomes. It gives a lot of pressure to introduce our speakers this afternoon. The first speaker is Dr. Narcrisha Norman, who is currently a program director in the Division of Graduate Education in the Education and Human Resources Directorate program at the National Science Foundation. Dr. Norman is at NSF on an Intergovernmental Personnel Act appointment from the Embry-Riddle Aeronautic University. She holds a faculty appointment in the Department of Engineering and Technology within the College of Aeronautics. Our second speaker, and hopefully she can join us as well, is Dr. Bonnie Green, who is currently serving as a rotator program officer in the Division of Undergraduate Education at the National Science Foundation. Our third speaker is Dr. Sandra Romano, who is a program officer at the National Science Foundation, where she participates in managing the Louis Stokes Alliances for Minority Participation, normally known as LSAMP. Also the Alliances for Graduate Education and the Professorate programs, the AGET program, in the Division of Human Resources, Resource Development, as well as the Racial Equity in STEM Education program. So we really welcome you to be part of this webinar series. Program officers at National Science Foundation, and we welcome everybody for taking your time to be with us this afternoon. Thank you. Please go ahead, Dr. Norman.
Thank you all for joining us today. I'm gonna share my screen. So again, thank you all for joining us today. We're going to give you a quick overview of the racial equity in STEM education program description. My name, of course, is Dr. Narcrisha Norman. I'm with the Division of Graduate Education, and my colleagues joining me today are Drs. Romano and Dr. Green. The racial equity in STEM education is a multi-divisional funding opportunity, meaning that each division within the Education and Human Resources Directorate have representation and have funding through this program description. So as you can see, I'm in Division of Graduate Education, but Bonnie is in the Division of Undergraduate Education, and Sandra is in the Division of Human Resource Development. Pretty much what that means is if you can find yourself in the realm of education and see yourself in any of these divisions, you could also see yourself getting funding through our program description. A little bit about what a program description is. So there are a variety of different funding opportunities offered by the National Science Foundation, and a program description is just one of those opportunities. So we'll talk about what a program description is. We'll talk about an overview of our program description. Then we'll go into nuts and bolts of the program description, how to prepare a proposal just a little bit, and talk to you about some resources that are available to help you prepare that proposal. So what is a program description? It's basically a call for proposals, and what we're doing is encouraging submission of proposals in a general area of interest. In this case, it's racial equity and systemic racism. The synopsis, or the thing that's published online, is the entire announcement. So there are no additional information as far as that's concerned. Everything is fully contained in that web page synopsis. Another thing is all submissions follow the NSF's proposal and awards procedures guide. So questions that you might ask about what can be included in the budget or submission process can all be found in what we call the PAPPG. Now we'll talk a little bit about the project context, about what we mean by racial equity and systemic racism, about our goals, what we mean as far as knowledge generation is concerned. One important thing for this particular funding opportunity are that the voices are in leadership and in proposal preparation, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So as far as project contents, and we put that this list is not all inclusive. So if you can find yourself in pre-K through K education, so these are certain areas in education that you can write a proposal for. So if you were in media, if you were in museums, municipal organizations, graduate institutions, we pretty much accept every level of education in this program description. What's important to us is that competitive proposals clearly inform how the work will advance racial equity and how it will address systemic racism. What's also important to note is that these constructs may have different meanings in different settings, so we have not defined them within our program description. We're allowing that up to the proposal submitters or the principal investigators. We want to know how do systemic barriers impact access to, retention to, and success in STEM education, research, and workforce development around STEM. These are questions that we seek to answer from our proposals through the racial equity program description. We have 5 goals. We want to advance the science and promotion of racial equity in STEM. We want to contribute to removing the systemic barriers that may impact STEM education, its workforce, and scientific advancement. We want to institutionalize effective and inclusive environments for STEM learning, research, and professionals. We want to diversify the project leadership, meaning the PIs and co-PIs, institutions, ideas, and approaches that NSF funds. We want to expand the array of epistemologies, perspectives, and experience in STEM education. Now, we're not assuming that any one proposal will do all of these 5 goals, but collectively, this is what our portfolio of proposals will do. We also want to generate knowledge through research and practice. And then knowledge can be generated in a variety of different ways. It can be generated through building theory, developing methods, testing approaches and interventions, and assessing the potential, efficacy, effectiveness, and scalability of approaches and interventions. could also be generated through establishing and cultivating and assessing authentic partnerships, changing institutional, organizational, and structural practices and/or policies, or it could also be done through focusing on effective behavioral, cultural, and social components and implications. Another very important part of this particular funding opportunity is that we expect that proposals will be led by, and if they're not led by, they will be developed and led in authentic partnership with individuals and communities most impacted by the inequities caused by systemic racism. So what that really means is that the voices, knowledge, and experience of those that will be impacted by the enduring racial inequities should be at the center of these proposals. And that's in the leadership, in the research positions, and the conceptualization of the proposal, and decision-making process, and interpretation and dissemination of evidence and results. So pretty much the voices of those most impacted should be seen throughout the proposal. Now I'm gonna turn things over to Dr. Romano.
Thank you, Narcrisha, and good afternoon, everybody. So this next section of the presentation is going to be sort of about the nuts and bolts of putting together a proposal. We'll talk about what the funding is about, where to submit it, the different areas of STEM that are covered, what our deadlines are, and what we do in terms of reviewing concept papers. Next slide. Right, so the racial equity in STEM education program description is supported by programs across the Directorate of Education and Human Resources, the ones that you saw at the very beginning of this presentation. We recognize that this type of call for funding is somewhat different than is typical for this directorate. It's very open without specified funding levels and project types. This is intentional. We want you to be able to be creative and bold with respect to what you propose. Your funding requests should be appropriate for the scope of work you are proposing. There really isn't additional funding guidance. Next slide. So if you're familiar with other EHR programs, you may be wondering how to decide whether to submit to a specific program solicitation or this program description. Either is acceptable. Proposals focused on racial equity and systemic racism are explicitly or implicitly called for by programs across EHR. The racial equity in STEM education program description specifically calls for these proposals, but that doesn't mean your ideas don't also fit in other programs. Consider which call for proposals and which timing in terms of deadlines and target deadlines are the best fit for your concept, for the idea that you have for a proposal. Yet another question that comes up a lot as we're discussing the program description is what subject areas can a proposal focus on? So this program description will accept proposals focused on any subject area that NSF supports. Subject areas may include, any part of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Health and medicine are typically the domain of the National Institutes of Health, unless they are specifically related to STEM education and other areas supported by NSF. So these areas are generally not supported in terms of this program description. So so how long will this opportunity be available for? This is the first year of the program description. The first date that we accepted proposals was in July 2021. We have another target deadline coming up on October 12th, 2021, coming in soon. And then another proposals will be accepted on March 22nd, 2022. Going forward, starting in 2022, the proposals will be accepted the second Tuesdays in October and the fourth Tuesdays in March, so only twice a year. And as we said previously, the proposals can be submitted using research.gov or grants.gov not in Fastlane. And you can visit the program description webpage for any announcements or future dates. So if you'd like feedback on a concept, that is, you have an idea for a project that you're not sure if this works, whatever, you can put together a one-page concept paper and email it to the email address shown here, and that address is on the program description website as well. In the concept paper, we want you to be clear with respect to how your ideas align with the program description. If you want to receive feedback on the concept paper before a deadline date, the concept papers have to be received at least 6 weeks prior to the target date. So what should be in that concept paper? Really to think about it in terms of the NSF merit review criteria of intellectual merit and broader impacts. And we'll talk about those more in a few minutes, but the concept paper should address those in relation to what the program description focuses on. So the concept paper should answer the questions: how does your proposal address racial equity and/or systemic racism? And in what aspect of STEM education or workforce development does it address? Is it led by those most impacted by systemic racism? Or how does it include authentic partnerships in leadership and voices of those most impacted? What will you learn and who will benefit? That is, what knowledge will be generated by the project? And this concept paper is just used as a jumping off point for a conversation. A program officer will be available will have read the paper. They might have some questions for you, and we'll provide you feedback as well as try to address any specific questions you might have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Green for the next part of the presentation.
Thank you. So with the proposal preparation, we're going to be talking about the PAPPG, the Proposal and Award Policy and Procedure Guide, Intellectual Merit and Broader Impact, which is how your proposal will be reviewed. And then the NSF Merit Review Criteria, as well as what should be in the content of the proposal, and importantly, the dissemination plan and budget, as well as duration. Next slide. So when we talk about how your proposal is going to be evaluated, we're certainly going to be looking that you have identified a clear and significant challenge within racial equity. But we're really going to be looking then for that approach to addressing those barriers through the two different lenses. One is intellectual merit, and that is, what is the new knowledge that is going to be created and generated by this, by your endeavor. It's not just enough to change the little scope of where you are, but what will we be learning from this that can then be shared with others? And then the broader impact. How will this project have an impact on society at large? And one of the things that's important to keep in mind with broader impact is don't go too broad, right? Really focus on that broader impact of society at large in the here and now. And next slide. So with the merit review criteria, one thing that I would recommend for anybody on this call is, if you're interested in serving as a reviewer, that's one of the best ways that you can understand the merit review process. And at any point throughout EHR, our directorate, there are programs looking for reviewers. So feel free to reach out. But with the NSF merit review criteria, we're really looking at the potential for your proposal, the proposed activity, to advance knowledge within the field, advance understanding, and that's the intellectual merit, as well as to benefit or advance some sort of societal outcome, which of course the whole nature of the racial equity program description is a broader impact. We're also looking to see to what extent has the proposed activities, are they creative? Are they original? Do they have the opportunity to be transformative? Next slide. we're going to be looking to make sure that the plan that's being carried out is well reasoned, well organized, and rational. There should be some level of theoretical framework for what you're doing and why you're doing it. And very, very important, there needs to be a means for you to assess what's going on. Have you been successful? Under what circumstances have you been successful versus when hasn't it been successful, right? You really want to get that information, that assessment, that evaluation, so that you can then use it to make improvements. During the merit review process, we will be looking at how qualified is the team, the organization, the individuals to carry out this proposed activity. And again, specific to racial equity, is it being led by somebody that really understands this space? Or is there an authentic partnership, a true and authentic partnership? And all of that is important with regard to the qualifications. Are there adequate resources for everything to carry out the proposed activities? And that includes with the budget, right? Does the budget make sense? Next slide. So the content structure is, there's going to be a cover sheet, a project summary. The table of contents is generated. The project description is going to be a 15-page maximum. References are on top of the 15 pages. Biographical sketches, make sure that you follow the PAPPG current format. Budget and budget justification, again, the details are in the PAPPG. Current and pending support, there's a template that you need to follow for that. Facilities, equipment, and other resources. And special information. Make sure that you do not include anything that isn't asked for. That could create problems and have the proposal returned without review. The data management plan is important. It needs to be specific to your project, and there is great information on the NSF website on what a data management plan should look like. If you have a postdoc, there needs to be a postdoctoral mentoring plan, and then also collaborators and other affiliation information so that we can make sure that there are no conflicts of interest in who's reviewing you. Next slide. Dissemination is critical, right? It's not enough to answer these questions and find out and keep the information to yourself. We need to share it, and it needs to be very active, proactive, not in a passive way, to individuals and communities who are most impacted. Make sure that the budget makes sense. Generally, it's going to be from 3 to 5 years, but there is no specified limit with this program description. Make sure that it's reasonable and rational and not silly, right? That people look at and go, why are you asking for this? Or there's not enough money for you to do what you claim you want to do. Next slide. Again, you can find a lot of information at the PAPPG, which is right on the web page. There's also some training on research.gov and grants.gov. And visit our website because we often have office hours and other information announcements. We're here to help.
Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon and have taken your time to answer all of these questions and your great presentations and your enthusiasm for motivating people to join your program. We really appreciate it. And thank you everybody for attending the webinar. We expect you to attend our next webinar in October the 1st. Please become a member of the HSI Hub. We really appreciate it. Have a good afternoon, everybody. Thank you.